Hi you guys, this is a resource video for the Solving Variable on Both Sides Equations test review. Remember that this review needs to be completed at 100% before you will be allowed to take your test. So one of the things that students are struggling with when it comes to getting this review complete is the word problems. So I want to just do a couple of those for you. I think the rest of the questions, well actually I'm going to do one fraction one, and then I think the rest of the questions you should have a really good understanding of how to do. So whenever you're doing a word problem, the very first thing you want to do is you want to read for understanding. You want to make sure that you really know what's happening in the situation. After you know that, the next thing you want to do is you want to figure out what you're being asked or what task you're being asked to accomplish. So let's just start with reading for understanding. This says 2 pools are being filled with water. To start, the first pool had 972 liters of water and the second pool is empty. Water is being added to the first pool at a rate of 17 liters per minute. Water is being added to the second pool at a rate of 44 liters per minute. Now, when you're reading a math problem, you should read it just like you're reading a story in your English class. Make sure that as you read, you get a picture of what's happening in the situation. One of the things that I like to do for myself, because I do have a little bit of a hard time with my reading comprehension, is I'll draw myself a picture. And this really helps with my understanding. It's a really good strategy. So this is my first pool. So I know this word problem is about swimming pools and those swimming pools being filled with water. I know that to start, the first pool had some water in it and the second pool didn't. And I want to know when the water in the 2 pools is going to be equal. So when the amount of water in the first pool is the exact same as the amount of water in the second pool. So the tasks that I'm being asked to accomplish are, I want to write an expression for the amount of water in the first pool using the given information, and I want to write an expression for the amount of water in the second pool using the given information, and then I'm going to take those 2 expressions and write an equation to show when the 2 pools would have the same amount of water. So for the first pool, it says the first pool had 972 liters of water in it to start with. So I know that this pool is starting with some water. And then I also know that water is being added to the first pool at a rate of 17 liters per minute. So the first pool started with water in it, and then we're adding more. Every time 1 minute passes, there's going to be 17 more liters of water in the pool. Okay, and it tells us what variable to use for the number of minutes that water is being added. Now, for the second pool, I know that it started empty. Okay, so it started empty. And then water is being added at a rate of 44 liters per minute. So water is being added to the second pool at a much faster rate. You can see that this rate of change is 17 and this one is only 44. Or sorry, this one's only 17 and this one's 44. Those are my 2 expressions. So for this part of the task, I would say the water in the first pool after a certain number of minutes would be this, and the amount of water in the second pool after a certain amount of minutes would be this. Now we're going to take those 2 equations and we want to know when the 2 pools would have the same amount of water. So for our equation, we just take and set those 2 equal to each other, and we now have our equation. This, when we solve for x, that will tell us how many minutes it's going to take for them to have the same amount of water. Okay, second word problem I want to do for you. I'm going to read for understanding first. It says a small publishing company is planning to publish a book. The production costs will include one-time fixed costs, such as editing and variable costs. The one-time fixed costs will total $26,752. The variable costs will be $10.50 per book. The publisher will sell the finished product to bookstores at a price of $21.50 per book. how many books must the publisher produce and sell so that the production cost will equal the amount of money for sales? So this problem is about books, making books and selling books. And we want to know how many books the publisher has to sell in order to break even with the amount of money it costs them to make the books. That's what this is about. Okay, so here's the question. Here's our task. How many books must the publisher produce and sell so that the production cost will equal the money from the sales? Okay, when will they break even? So let's go back to our question and read about what we know about production costs. So to make the book, it's going to cost a one-time fixed cost of $26,752. Okay, then there's going to be some variable costs. Okay, so these are for other things that are variable, but that variable cost is going to be $10.50 per book. Okay, so let's use the variable B to stand in for number of books. We need to use a defined variable. So $10.50 per book. Okay, now it says that, so this is the cost to make the book. And then it says the publisher will sell the finished product to bookstores at a price of $21.50 per book. Okay, so the expression for that would be $21.50 per book. Okay, this is the amount of money they make for the sale of the books. Okay, $21.50 for every book they sell. We want to know when the production cost is going to be equal to the sale of books so that they can break even. Okay, so we want to know how many books do they need to sell so the production cost will equal the money from the sales. So here's our equation, and then this time we do need to solve this equation. So when we solve an equation, first step is to simplify the left side. There's no like terms to combine there. Then we want to simplify the right side. There's no like terms to combine there. Then we want to get our two variable terms. We want to get those on the same side. So we basically want these two variable terms on one side, and then we want this number term on the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to minus 2150b from both sides to start. Now on my right side, if I do that, I'm left with a 0 that I need to write down. And then this is going to be negative 11b. So now I have 26,752. I have a negative 11b equal to 0. And now we want to move this number over to the other side, right? We want to make sure that we have variables on one side, numbers on the other. We pay careful attention to our signs. And then our last step here is to take and divide both sides by negative 11. That will tell us how many books we need to sell. So I'm going to grab my trusty calculator and I'm going to do my division. And I get 2,432. That's the number of books that we need to sell in order to break even. After they sell, if they sell less books than that, then they are still in a deficit. If they sell more books than that, that's where their profit comes from. Okay, and I'm going to do one more question for you. Well, two more, actually. Well, I'm going to do two more, but I'm not going to totally do the first one. On this first one, what I want you to remember when you see an equation like this is u divided by 12 is the same thing as 1/12 times by u. And u divided by 8 is the same thing as negative 1/8 times by u. And so when you solve an equation that looks like this, just make sure that you treat those divisions as coefficients, and then you can just combine your like terms and solve from there. Okay, on the last example problem, you have an equation with fractions, And the thing that you have to remember is an equation with fractions gets solved using the exact same step as an equation without. So first step, simplify the left side. When we look at our left side, nothing can simplify. Second step, simplify the right side. When we look at our right side, nothing can simplify. Next step, collect your variable terms. Okay, so this -4/3 u, that's a variable term. -7/2 u, that's a variable term. It's just that the variables are the coefficients are fractions. So we're going to collect our variable terms on one side. I want to get rid of this variable term that's on my right side. And remember that we always do the exact same thing on both sides of an equation when we're solving. So now -7/2 plus 4/3 is going to give me -13/6 times by u. I still have my +7, and on the right side, I still have my -1/2. Okay, now on this next part, we have our variable term on the left side, which is what we want, but now we need to get our number term to be on the right side. Okay, so we want to get rid of this 7. We don't want it to be on our variable side, so we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. I just ran out of space here, so I'm going to bring this up here. -13/6 times by u equals -1/2, and then -7. I'm actually going to leave that number in my calculator because I know my very next step is to isolate this variable by getting rid of that multiplication of -13/6. So I'm going to have to divide, which means that this side right here, this -15/2 is going to have to get divided by the -13/6. And that -15/2, I just left that in my calculator because that's got to go in the calculator first. And that does matter. It does matter. So -13/6. And then our final answer is u equals 45/13. And there you go. There's some help for you for your solving equation test review. Make sure that you are getting this done as soon as possible at 100% so you can take your test.